If your phone rings tonight at 3:33 a.m. and the caller ID shows the name of someone who has already been buried, do not answer it, because Sarah did. And what she heard on the other end changed the rest of her life forever. Sarah Miller had buried her mother 8 months ago. Cancer had taken her slowly, painfully, over the course of a long year, and by the end, Sarah had made peace with it. Or so she thought. She had cried at the funeral, packed away her mother's clothes, sold the old house, and moved on with her quiet life in a small apartment on the edge of town. She worked late shifts at a diner, came home exhausted, and fell asleep most nights without even changing out of her uniform. She thought grief was something you slowly climbed out of, like crawling out of a deep well, and every day the light got a little closer. She was wrong. It was a Tuesday night, cold and rainy, when her phone rang at exactly 3:33 in the morning. She woke with a start, heart pounding, the way you do when a sound cuts through a dead, silent house. She grabbed her phone from the nightstand, and her blood turned to ice. The screen said, in plain glowing letters, "Mom." Not Mom's old number, not unknown caller, just Mom. The same contact she had never deleted, the same number she hadn't called in 8 months because there was no one left to answer it. Her hands shook so badly she almost dropped the phone. She told herself it was a glitch, a prank, a wrong number that somehow matched. She let it ring. It rang 4 times and stopped. Silence swallowed the room again. Sarah lay there, staring at the ceiling, telling herself it was nothing until the phone buzzed again. Same name, same time, still glowing 3:33. This time, against every instinct screaming inside her, she answered it. She pressed the phone to her ear and whispered, "Hello?" For a moment there was nothing but static, like wind blowing through a hollow tube. And then, faint and broken, she heard it. A voice. Her mother's voice. "Sarah, honey, it's cold down here." Sarah's entire body went numb. She wanted to scream, but no sound came out. The voice continued, slow, stretched, as if speaking through water. "Why did you let them close the box, Sarah? Why didn't you check?" The line went dead. Sarah sat frozen in her bed for what felt like hours, phone still pressed to her ear, listening to nothing but her own heartbeat hammering in her skull. She told herself it was a dream, a nightmare bleeding into reality, some trick her exhausted mind had played on her after months of grief and long shifts and too little sleep. She didn't sleep again that night. The next morning, she called her cousin Ben, the only family member close enough to talk to about something this insane. She expected him to laugh, to tell her she was imagining things, to remind her that grief does strange things to the mind. Instead, his voice went quiet on the other end of the line. "Sarah," he said slowly, "I got a call last week too. Same time, same voice." Neither of them slept well after that conversation. 2 days later, the calls started happening more often, always at 3:33 a.m., always from the same contact, always with that same cold, broken voice, whispering fragments of sentences that made less and less sense. "The dirt is heavy. I can hear you upstairs. Don't let them bury me twice." Sarah began recording the calls, desperate for some kind of proof, some kind of explanation. When she played them back later, there was nothing but static, empty electronic noise, no voice at all, as if the recording had erased her mother from the world twice. She started researching online, digging through old forums and creepypasta threads, looking for anyone else who had experienced something like this. She found scattered stories, Dozens of people from different countries describing eerily similar experiences. Phone calls from dead relatives, all at the same time, 3:33 a.m., all with static-filled voices whispering unsettling half-sentences about being cold, being buried wrong, wanting someone to check. Some called it a technological glitch. Some called it a hoax. But one theory stuck in Sarah's mind and refused to let go. An old man on one forum, claiming to be a retired mortician, wrote that certain graveyards were built on land with strange electromagnetic properties, and that under very specific circumstances, the dead could reach back through electronic frequencies during what he called the hollow hour, the exact witching time between death and true rest. He warned that if you truly loved the person calling, you needed to go to their grave and confirm they were still there, still resting. Because sometimes, just sometimes, the body wasn't where it was supposed to be. Sarah didn't believe in ghosts. She was a rational person. But rational people don't get phone calls from dead mothers either, and by now she was desperate enough to try anything. That night, against every warning bone in her body, she drove out to the cemetery where her mother was buried. The rain had stopped, but the fog clung low to the ground, curling around the old headstones like something alive. Her flashlight beam trembled as she walked the familiar path toward her mother's grave, the one she used to visit every Sunday, now overgrown with weeds she hadn't noticed before. When she reached the plot, her stomach dropped. The grave looked disturbed. The earth was uneven, sunken in a strange, unnatural way, as if something beneath the surface had shifted. Her hands trembling, she knelt down and brushed away the wet soil near the headstone, telling herself she just needed to see, just needed proof that everything was fine, that this was all some cruel coincidence or a sick prank someone was playing on a grieving family. But the ground felt loose, recently disturbed, not settled like 8 months of rest should feel. Her flashlight flickered, the battery dying at the worst possible moment, and in that brief flash of darkness, she heard it, right behind her, breathing, slow, wet, familiar. She spun around, flashlight buzzing back to life, and there was nothing there, just fog and silence, and the distant sound of wind through dead branches. She ran back to her car, locked the doors, and sat there shaking for nearly 20 minutes before she found the courage to drive home. She told herself it was her imagination, adrenaline, fear playing tricks in a graveyard at night, exactly what any sane grieving daughter would experience under those conditions. She didn't sleep at all that night, staring at her phone, waiting, dreading the moment it would light up again with that name she used to love seeing on her screen. At exactly 3:33 a.m., it rang. She almost didn't answer, her thumb hovering over the screen, every nerve in her body screaming at her to let it ring out into silence forever. But something inside her, some old habit of a daughter who once ran to answer her mother's calls without hesitation, made her press accept. This time the static was thinner, clearer, almost as if the voice on the other end was closer than before, closer than a phone line should allow. "Sarah," the voice whispered, softer now, almost gentle. "I'm not down there anymore." The call ended, and the silence that followed felt heavier than any silence she had ever known. She sat in the dark, phone glowing faintly in her hand, and slowly, impossibly, she heard a second sound layered beneath her own heartbeat, a soft, wet knocking coming from somewhere inside her apartment, somewhere close, somewhere behind the bedroom door that she was absolutely certain she had locked before going to bed. If you enjoyed this story, make sure to like this video and subscribe for more terrifying tales. because you never know when your own phone might ring at 3:33 a.m.